Hi, I'm Stephanie from Sew Sustainably, and I'm on a mission to teach home sewers how to sew recycled leather on their home machines. Join me as I show you how to make a recycled leather pyramid wristlet out of leather scraps. I am so happy to be a part of the Scrap Summit, and the project that I'm going to be demonstrating today is the recycled leather pyramid wristlet. This is one of them, and as you can see, it's made from very small scraps of recycled leather. You can also use fabric, but since I exclusively sew in recycled leather, I've made mine out of leather. Stay tuned as we go through this project. To make this recycled leather pyramid wristlet, you're going to need the following supplies: 2 pieces of scrap fabric or leather. In my case, I use pretty much work exclusively in recycled leather, so these are 2 pieces of recycled leather. Your pieces should be square. The size doesn't really matter. It depends on the size you want your finished wristlet to be. These are 6 inches by 6 inches. So you need 2 square pieces of scrap fabric or scrap leather. You need an 11 by 1.5 inch strip for the strap. You need a piece that is 1/2 inch by 1.5 inches for a tab for the swivel hook. You need 2 pieces of fabric that need to be the same size as for the lining. So they need to be the same size as your main fabric for your leather scrap. So 2 pieces of scrap fabric the same size that can be for your lining. You need a zipper, and the zipper needs to be longer than the one side of your scrap that you're going to use. You need a swivel hook and ring, or 2 swivel hooks if you don't have a hook and ring. And you need some double-sided tape. The tape that I use most of the time is the Dritz Wash Away double-sided tape. Actually does not stick up or gum up the needle, and almost every other kind I've tried will gum up your needle while you're sewing if you sew over it. But this you can sew over with no issues at all. First thing that we're going to do is create a new top stopper for our zipper. As I said, the zipper should be longer than the one side of the fabric or leather that you're going to be using. So we don't want either the stops at the top here or bottom to be actually in our work. So what we're going to do is we're going to open the zipper up part of the way, and then we're going to we're going to select a space. It really doesn't matter where on the zipper you do it, as long as your zipper is long enough on both ends. And we're going to take it over to the sewing machine, and we're going to just tack where we would like our zipper to end. Okay, so we're going to put a row of double-sided tape across the top of our one of our bodies, one of the pieces of our main body of leather or scrap fabric, whichever. We're going to peel the backing off. Okay, and then we're going to lay our zipper face down, far away from either the new stop that we put and the end spot. So we're going to place it face down on the body of our leather or scrap, with the slider off to the right. We're going to put another piece of double-sided tape across on top of the zipper. And then we're going to put one of our lining pieces face down. I don't know if I mentioned that the leather is face up. So the leather's face up, the zipper's face down, then our piece of lining is also going to be face down on top of the zipper. Make sure you line up the sides, press down, and then we're going to take this to the sewing machine and sew. A lot of times when I'm sewing leather, I use a seam guide because that keeps my seams really straight. And that's not, after all these years of sewing, it's still something that I find a challenge sometimes. I especially will use a seam guide when sewing leather because leather is not very forgiving when it comes to puncture holes, unlike fabric where you can just use your seam ripper and rip a seam out and press it and the holes will be gone. But with leather, it's a lot more difficult. It can be done. You can get rid of the holes, but it's a lot more work. So a lot of times when I'm sewing and putting zippers in and things like that, I use a seam guide when I'm sewing leather. So I'm going to use one now. And I'm not, it's going to really lift dangerously because I'm not going to use a zipper foot. I'm just going to put the zipper in with my regular universal foot. So I'll sew a few stitches forward. Of course, I want to lock the stitches in, so I'll go backwards. And I'm just going to sew the zipper, this side of the zipper in. So now we're going to put another row of double-sided tape along the top of our remaining leather or fabric scrap, face up. We're going to put it on the side, the right side up. Pull off our backing, and then we're going to take the piece we just sewed, and we're going to fold the body of the work down so that we're exposing the right side of the leather and the right side of our lining. And then we're going to place the zipper face down on the right side of the leather, so it'll be right sides together. And your slider should be off to the left at this point. There it is. I'm going to open the slider up a little bit so that I have less trouble sewing than I did before. So you want to lay the zipper along the top edge, pressing it down. So you want to take the remaining piece of your lining and you want to put another piece of double-sided tape across the top of the zipper. I'm going to pull this off, ending up there. All right, okay, great. Pull the backing off. And then lay your remaining piece of lining face right sides together, wrong side up on top of the zipper. Align, make sure your sides are aligned, not so good there. Pull it off and make sure that you have, since it's a square, it's not that hard to align. You should be able to align it. I'm just cutting off some little stray strands, which, you know, stay stitching would have been great for this, but, you know, so I don't know, you know, sometimes I live dangerously. We want to, so you want to lay that, you want to line up your sides, and then you want to press it into the double-sided tape. Okay, so right now you should have all four pieces, your two top pieces of leather, your lining pieces are all together. Now I'm going to take this to the machine and we're going to sew this seam across the top. Okay, I'm going to sew the next seam, but I think before I do that, I'm going to open up my zipper a little bit so that it doesn't get, and then close it while I'm sewing. Okay. So I have my seam guide still in place because, as I said, when sewing with leather, I like to have the seam guide since leather is not as forgiving when you have to rip something out as fabric is. So I have my seam guide in place, and I'm going to sew a few stitches forward, a few stitches backwards, and then just sew the seam. Oh, and I think I'm almost at my zipper, so I'm going to raise my pressure foot. Oh, turn my needle just a little bit until I can maneuver the zipper back on the other side of the pressure foot. And we'll continue. Okay. So I like the way the zipper came out. It's really nice and close. The leather is very close to the zipper. There's not a lot of the zipper tape showing, and I really like that. I'm going to top stitch now. I'm going to top stitch from this side all the way down to the bottom. I'm going to cross over with my stitching, go all the way back up to and across. So I'm going to make sure that when I do get down to this end, though, that I don't stitch on the other side, leave my slider on the other side of my stitching. I'm going to make sure it's on this side so that I don't lock it outside of my work. So I moved my seam guide because I don't need it for this. I'm going to use my foot. I'm going to line up with the foot, and I'm going to make my stitches really large because that's kind of top stitching that I like. And if you make your stitches too small with leather, it'll actually perforate the leather. So it's really good not to use a short stitch length when top stitching or actually sewing in leather with leather at all. Okay, and I'm going to turn. It's too far out, I think. On another stitch. Yeah, that's probably better. Yep, that's great. Come across. And let me see where that is. That's just about perfect. And then I'm going to stitch down. At this point, I'm going to raise my pressure foot, move that zipper out of the way. And then continue. And that top stitching looks pretty good. So now we're going to place our tab on the outside of our bag. So take your swivel hook and the piece of leather or fabric that you have that's at half an inch. If you use fabric, I think you might want to make it an inch. Fold it over, stitch, right sides together, stitch, and then turn it inside out. Since I'm using leather, I just have a piece that's 1.5 inches by half an inch, and I'm just going to thread it through here, and because that's fine. And then we place it. Open your zipper up. Have your wristlet facing up. You want to open your zipper, and you want to place the tab with the swivel hook facing inward, and then you want to place it about an inch, inch and a half down from the top. So I'm just going to clip that and take that to the sewing machine and sew it. Sewing the tab into the seam. Go slowly because you have a few layers to go through, and then back stitch over it, and then that should be good. Okay, so let's sew the side seams. What we're going to do is put our main fabric or leather pieces together, and we're going to put our lining pieces together, and we're going to sew down. We're going to sew down the sides. We're going to sew down the sides of our. We're going to sew down the sides of our leather or main fabric pieces, and we're going to sew down the sides of our lining. So I'll take that over the machine and do that now. So now we're going to sew this down the side seams, the mains together and the linings together. Cut the stitches forward, lock it, and now the lining. Now we're going to sew down the side with the tab. Make sure your swivel hook is inside, and you want to possibly clip where the main, where your zipper is, where the main and the lining meet. So I'm going to sew down the third side and just sew 1.5 inches back stitch, leave an opening so we can turn in the lining, and then start again, back stitch, and then go all the way down. Stop about here, back stitch, just going to leave the opening and about 3 inches, and then start sewing again. So when you're trying to sew a seam that has a lot of bulk, if you don't have one of those hump jumpers which go on the back to sort of raise your pressure foot up, you can use a piece of folded fabric, or I'm using leather in this case. I'm just going to stick it under the back of my pressure foot to raise it so that it's at an even height when it goes over that part of my seam. And it really works well As you can see, my pressure foot is, maybe you can't see, but my pressure foot is at an even height. The back is now raised up to be the same length as the front, so that'll make it easier to sew this seam. Stick it under there a bit more. And then my little makeshift hub jumper fell out. So I went ahead and cut the ends of the zippers off and also cut my corners, which you want to cut at an angle to be sure not to cut into your stitching. Also going to, after sewing this last seam, I'm going to also cut some of the seams to reduce the bulk. But right now, we're going to fold so we can sew our last seam, and this is really where the magic happens with this little wristlet. Because you open the seam and the open side, it's the only seam that's left. Match up your middle of your seam with the middle of your zipper. Move that down just a tad. And so line up your zipper with the seam in the middle, with the where your seam is, and then clip. So it produces a little triangular. This is where the triangular shape comes in. Flip it over and do the exact same thing with the lining. You can just finger press it open, but you want to also make sure that your lining is lining up with your the middle of your zipper as well. So I remove the clip so that I can open up my seam and make sure that it lines up with the middle of my zipper. And you want to check that you've got the same thing on the other side. Now clip them. Clip the seams open, and you might want to clip this entire seam. That's up to you. Make sure it's all even on both sides. Take it to the machine and sew across here. You might want to backstitch across the zipper. So now we finished sewing all our seams and we've cut down our excess bulk. So now what we're going to do is turn this. And we left an opening in the lining, and we're going to carefully turn this wristlet through the lining. But this leather is thicker than fabric, but it's going to be fine. So we're just going to finesse it. Take our time, and we can always sew any part of the lining that might come loose while we're tugging at this. We can always go back and sew it up. So I'm turning it. Okay. Whew. It looks like a hot mess right now, but we're going to keep at it. And, okay, so far, not bad. It's looking like I expect it to look. And we're going to push out. Of course, we're going to go in there where our, we're going to go in where, through our lining, we're going to poke out our corners. So, pokey, poke them out. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm going to go over here on the other side, poke out our corner. I might have could have cut that corner down a little bit more. Maybe I will do that. Yeah, give me a crisper edge. Oh yeah, I like that better. This one is pretty good. And we've got a third corner. So I'm going inside. Actually, it feels like this one might not need to be cut down. Oh, I guess that's not good. Bad. Push, 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 push. Oh, that's nice and crisp. I like that. Okay. And we'll pull out our lining. Take that to the machine. Fold it down. And just seam that on the machine. Now we're going to prepare the strap for the wristlet. It's 1.5 inches wide by 11 inches long. Put a roll of double-sided tape approximately halfway, in the about halfway down the center of the strap. Peel off the backing. You want to start folding in the center, and you can eyeball this. You want to sew this, you want to fold this approximately a little bit beyond where you laid that line of double-sided tape. And if you start folding in the middle, it seems like it works better than starting at either end. So I fold a little bit, I go back, I fold the other side. And the great thing about this, you can reposition it. And we're still going. Okay. Okay. Bye. Have fun. And we fold. Fold. And now we put another piece of double-sided tape on the end. But you want to make sure it's inside so that when you fold it, you're not going to see that. So make sure that none of the double-sided tape is sticking out. It doesn't matter if it's in a little bit more at one point than another. Just want to make sure it's down good. Tear this off. You peel off the backing. And cut this is a little bit too long. Cut that off. And now we start to fold again from the center. You want to fold it so that it just about meets the other side. Excuse me, the fold. So you see, I'm just folding it so it's just short of going up to the end. And it makes it just about the right size for your swivel hook or your ring. You want to run 2 lines of top stitching down the length of the strap. I've already done 1 row. I'm doing the other. I go slowly because, like I said, leather's not that forgiving when you have holes in it. It's not like fabric. It's very difficult to get the holes to disappear. You can do it, but it's takes some iron and some steam and a lot of work, which I show in another video. Let's see how that looks. Looks pretty good. To close the strap, I'm going to put the ring on, the little ring, and then I'm going to open up this one side of the end of the strap. I'm going to tuck the other side in like this, wrap it around, and then I'm going to take it to the machine and I'm just going to sew across here. I'm going to have my stitch length at 3.5. Back it up. I'm hoping it's stitched. Oh. It's not the prettiest stitches I've ever seen, but it will hold it, and that's what I want. So here are some completed triangle wristlets. This one is actually the same fabric that is used on the inside of this one as a lining, so it's on the outside. As you can see, it's a really cute project, a really good way to use up some scraps. You don't have to have both sides be the same. You could have one side leather, one side fabric, or different fabrics. I happen to just this time use matching fabrics for both sides, but this project lends itself to using up all the scraps that you might have. Just you can mix and you can match. This one is, fabric. This one is leather, but has the inside, the lining is this fabric. This is the inside of this is a shirt, a recycled men's shirt that I use for the lining. So you can do a lot of really, really cute things with this project, and it's useful too. If it's like 7 inches or more, I think maybe this one's a 7-inch one. You can actually put your cell phone in here, your keys, and you're out for an evening of fun just with a little funky bag that you made yourself. So I hope you'll use this project. It's a good way, like I said, to use up your scraps. Have fun sewing. Sewing recycled leather on your home machine can seem a bit daunting when you first start out. Watch my other presentation in the Scrap Summit, Life Cycle of a Scrap, Sewing Recycled Leather on Your Home Machine. In that presentation, I discuss the types of leather that you can recycle and sew on your home machine. And there are tips for how to be successful with the process. Also, click on the link below to get my free checklist of 11 tips for sewing recycled leather on your home machine.